LJ Clark, your friendly neighborhood Mountain Man Gourmet here, with a quick tip for a real quick and easy, yummy kind of dinner that you're just going to love. Now, one of the great things about this particular meal is you're not going to have to do much of anything. Sometimes you're just going to be tired getting home from work. Sometimes you're just going to not be feeling well. If you can tell by my voice, getting over a little cold here. Haven't really felt like cooking much lately, but I really am in the need for some good home cooked taste, and I'm going to add some fresh veggies and stuff to make it worth it. But sometimes you don't want to spend a lot of time in the kitchen, and it's okay to do that. So what we've got here is we've got a can or a bottle here of home-style marinara sauce. Now this is just a store-bought, generic store-bought brand. This one comes from Kroger supermarkets, and it's fine, okay? One thing you want to look out for, though, if you're buying store-bought spaghetti sauce or pretty much store-bought anything, is you want to make sure it doesn't have high fructose corn syrup in it. Maybe someday I'll do a whole show dedicated to the evils of high fructose corn syrup. It's really nasty stuff. You don't want to put it in your body, trust me. So just make sure it doesn't have it. And thankfully the good folks here at Kroger, or the people who contract out to them and actually make the spaghetti sauce for them, didn't put it in here. So I'm really glad. Tomato puree, water, tomato paste, diced tomatoes and tomato juice, sugar, soybean oil, salt, dried onions, dried garlic, spices, citric acid, Romano cheese, and basil. Yeah, that's it. Okay, that's all fresh ingredients. So don't be afraid sometimes of buying the generic version of products, because this one is actually great. The only thing it isn't is organic. But if it was organic, if it said organic on the label, instead of costing $2, it'd probably be $8. All right. So, you know, I'd love to eat organic everything, but like you, we probably can't afford it all the time. And science is kind of out on it anyway. Is it really worth it? Depends on what you're buying, okay? So we'll talk more about that some other time too. But that's our first ingredient here. Then we've got some crushed red pepper. Now, take a look at this. This is a leftover packet of crushed red pepper that I got from some kind of takeout pizza. Okay, but I save these kind of things because there it is. It's easy. Okay, here I have a little jar of olive oil. Here I have 2 tomatoes. Now, this is another tip for you. Look at these tomatoes. Okay? Look at those tomatoes. That's kind of gross. It's got these little black spots on it. See that? Well, with these little black spots, you probably wouldn't buy those in the store. Now, I bought these in the store, but maybe about a week ago, and I haven't quite got to use them because I've been sick the last few days, and I haven't felt like coming out and chopping fresh vegetables, right? Now, am I going to throw these whole tomatoes away, though, just because they have little black spots on them? No. I learned this a long time ago when I was volunteering at a children's home in Mexico. And we would get donated food. And that was part of my job, was to go out and pick up food from the grocery stores. Day-old bread, vegetables that look like this, stuff that's about to expire, etc. What I learned at that time is you just cut off the little black spots. Before that time, I would have just thrown these away. I would have thought, wow, these tomatoes are bad. I'm just going to throw them away. Well, no, they're not bad. There's a little corner of them that's bad, but this is a good thing to do, and it's a good thing to learn so you don't waste food. There's people in this world that are starving, like those kids in the children's home in Mexico, and they didn't care. Now, I wasn't going to feed them the black spots. No, that's nasty. You don't want to eat that. You don't want to feed it to anybody. But I'm going to cut it off, and the rest of the tomato will be fine. I'll show you exactly what it looks like. Now, got a little piece of green pepper here. I've already cut it off just for purposes of the show. And I've got a whole onion. I'm not going to use the whole onion, but I'm going to use some of that. Got a couple little pieces of garlic. Here we go. And I've got half a loaf, maybe a third of a loaf here, of some leftover French bread. And I put that in the freezer, so anytime I want to use it, I can get it and take it out. I like to make my own bread, of course, when I can, but again, sometimes you just don't feel like it, you don't have time, and it's all right. Okay, next thing we got, and this is our last ingredient for today, is I've got some Omaha Steaks meatballs. All right, here you go. Italian style meatballs from Omaha Steaks. Omaha Steaks is a really great company. They will send you all kinds of cool food in the mail, and it arrives at your door in a cooler, and you get all kinds of stuff in there. Sometimes when I'm snowed in up here in the mountains, I can order Omaha Steaks, and the FedEx or UPS truck guy will come, and he's got a big huge truck, and he can get through the snow. He'll come traipsing up the mountain and give me a big old box of food, which is really great when I'm stuck. And then sometimes we even order it in the summertime as a treat. We get these as gifts sometimes. We give them as gifts. So Omaha Steaks is a really cool thing. They make a lot more than just steaks though. And in this case, we've got Italian style meatballs. Now, I love making meatballs. I love making meatballs myself because I know what goes in them, right? And I can make them, and it's just fun kind of making, forming them and rolling them up and frying them a little bit and then sticking them in the oven and all that kind of stuff. But again, sometimes you just don't have time, or you're just not feeling good and you don't want to do it. So in that case, I keep a little handy stack of these meatballs right here. Now, you don't have to have Omaha Steaks meatballs. You can probably go to your local supermarket and check them out. But again, read the labels, okay? You don't want the meatballs that have a bunch of monosodium glutamate and artificial flavors and colors and all that stuff. Because one of the things we want to do as Mountain Man Gourmet men and the women who love them, who are cooking, right? We want to eat good food. We want to put good food into our bodies. We want to take care of ourselves, and we don't want to put a bunch of crap into us, okay? Or our family members, our girlfriends, even our dogs. All right. So what I'm going to do here is something really simple. I got a little frying pan. I'm going to take this frying pan. I'm going to chop up just a little bit of these vegetables. I'm going to pour a little bit of olive oil right here in the pan. Here we go, just a little bit there, maybe a tablespoon or so. Spread it out a bit. Okay, I don't measure a lot of stuff, as you might notice if you watch me often, but that's what I do. Okay, if you want to measure it, there you go. Now I've got an issue because my stove is not coming on there. I guess the pilot light is out on that side. So what I'm going to do is just switch sides. Hopefully the pilot light's on this side. Otherwise, I'll just stop the camera and we'll move on. There we go. That's working fine. Alright, I'll have to fix that pilot light when I'm done. Okay, so I'm going to set that at kind of a medium heat right there. If you have an electric oven, electric stovetop, and it goes up to 10, medium would be 5, okay, maybe 6, all right, to start with. Because what we're going to do here is we're going to saute these little vegetables in the olive oil, and then we're going to throw our meatballs and sauce in there and just let it sit for a while we go watch TV or go make out with our girlfriend or wife or something. You know, do something fun. And then just take a few minutes and let that soak up. And then in the meantime, we're going to slice our bread, stick a little cheese on it. At about 5 minutes before it's ready, we're going to throw that in the oven. And then we're going to pull it out, have this nice, hot, crusty French bread with melted cheese on it. And then we're going to put our meatballs with our peppers and onions and garlic on there and some sauce. And it's going to be just fantastic. You're just going to love it. So it's a really, really quick meal. I'm actually doing this in real time, at least this part here, just to show you how fast this is. So I've got my oil heating up, and I'm just going to slice up this little pepper here. Now sometimes if you're making fried rice or something, you might want to chop your peppers in little tiny pieces. In this case, we don't want to do that. We want to take these peppers and we want to have them in nice, thick, big, chunky slices here, because we want that texture in our sandwich. We don't want it to get lost in there. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing with the onion. going to do maybe, I'm just cooking for myself right here tonight, so I'm just going to make maybe a third of an onion, and I'm going to set this aside. Remember, we always want to save our different pieces of vegetables, okay, all the corners and the edges and all that stuff. So I'm going to save this onion. I'm going to save the edge of the pepper, which I didn't use the whole thing today. But when I'm done, I'm going to save that too. And then I'm going to boil those all up with chicken bones or beef bones, whatever, and make soup stock later. So remember, anything you cut off, unless it's a nasty piece of tomato like I'm about to do, anything you cut off, you want to save that, and then you can throw it in the soup stock. And then you want to make soup stock once or twice a week maybe, and then keep that available for all kinds of stuff to make soup with, obviously. But you can also use it as a base. You can boil rice in it to give it a little extra flavor and nutrition. You can use it in different Chinese foods, Thai foods, stuff like that. Okay, so remember, these are our nasty tomatoes, remember? Okay, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off this little piece and look at that inside. See that? That's beautiful, fine. Okay, got a little piece of onion on there. All right, so that's a nice, beautiful piece of tomato right there. Look at that, perfectly fine. Take this other piece, don't put it in your soup stock because this has nasty stuff in it. Just throw that one away. I'm just going to toss that in the sink right now, and I'll throw it away later. All right, other piece of nasty tomato. Going to cut that edge off. Again, always check inside just to make sure, because sometimes what is happening here is it's starting to rot a little bit, right? So you don't want that part. And sometimes it starts to go through the tomato a little. So you want to just check out the inside, make sure it's nice and good, which this one is. All right. So here I've got from 2 tomatoes that I could have just thrown away in my past after working with these kids in the children's home in Mexico and learning how to really stretch the food budget out. I learned that here we have 2 really great pieces of tomato which are going to be fine. Now, why am I using tomato when I already have tomato sauce? Well, you're right, I don't have to. If I wanted to, I could just use the marinara sauce and that would be fine. However, since I have these tomatoes, I'm going to go ahead and add them in. It's going to add a nice chunky texture and also some nice fresh vitamin C and other stuff that's in tomatoes. All right, now I'm going to toss these onions in here with pepper. All right. So there we go. We're just sauteing that up a little bit, again on that medium heat. And then I thought I had a couple little pieces of garlic out here. Garlic, where'd you go? Come to daddy. Come to daddy. Where's my, oh, I tossed them in there already. Look at that. That was kind of dumb. Okay, so lift those back out. Be careful if they're really hot. You might want to let them cool off for a second. Alright, I didn't mean to throw those in, but they were just sitting there next to the onions, and I'm a little bit colorblind, so a little garlic, this is the color of the garlic here, and here's the color of the onions that I cut. So as you can see, if you have some issues with color blindness, you might not notice that. Alright, so that's what I did, but no big deal. I'm just going to now squish these up, and with garlic, you always want to squish it first, and that helps to release some of the natural oils and extra flavor that you're going to get. So that's really good. So don't just chop them up like in pieces of onions. You want to squish them first. All right. Now, typically, there we go. That's nice and squished, and then they peel a lot easier too when you squish them. But normally, I would have saved these the extra end pieces and all that, but in this case today, since I already threw it in the pan with the olive oil and stuff, I don't want to stick that in with all my vegetables for 2 or 3 days in the fridge. I'm just going to throw that away. Alright, normally I would chop those end pieces off and stick them right in there with my other stuff that I would be using for my soup stock. Alrighty, so now we've got this nice garlic here. I'm going to throw that in, and remember I've got these tomato pieces, and I've got the tomato sauce in the bottle, and I've got my red pepper. Alright, So I'm going to just let this saute just a little bit by itself. Just going to get that nice kind of charred taste on the onions and the garlic and the pepper. Remember, I didn't put a lot of oil in here, just enough to kind of make it a little glistening on the outside, and it just gives it a nice little flavor there. Alrighty. Okay, so here we go next. I'm going to go ahead and I think I'll toss these red peppers in. Now, I'm not going to use a whole packet of this, maybe about a half. Just do that to taste. I love hot red peppers. My wife doesn't like them so much, but she's not here tonight, so I could have as much as I wanted, really. But tonight, my stomach's not feeling so great. I'm already going to be attacking it with a bunch of acid and stuff from the tomatoes, so I want to be just a little careful with how much spice I put in there. But that's up to you. Put as much or as little as you want. Alright, now I'm going to just stir this up a little bit more. Remember, they're just kind of heating up, getting a little bit char on the outside. And then I'm going to put my tomatoes. Remember, the tomatoes here are optional, alright? You don't have to do this, but since I had them, and if I don't use them within the next day or so, they're going to go bad anyway. But besides that, look at these nice chunks of tomato. Oh, baby. Look at that, okay? Yum, yum. That's going to add a really nice texture to this sandwich that I'm making. Alrighty, chop, choppity chop. Couple more little pieces. Again, nice big chunks here. Okay? Bite-sized chunks. Don't chop it up too much, or you might as well just make it into have regular sauce, right? Okay. Now, here's another thing I could do if I wanted, is I could just make this sandwich without the tomato sauce at all. I don't even need it. I've got 2 tomatoes there, well, 2/3 of 2 tomatoes. Okay, so about, alright, let's do math here. Okay folks, remember I was a music and English major. That would be 4/6. 2/3 plus 2/3, 4/6, which is still 2/3. Okay, 2/3 of 2 tomatoes. Yeah, so that's 4/6. So, alright, never mind. Okay. So much for math. Alright, now, good thing I'm just cooking for myself tonight because I'm going to cough a little bit here, excuse me. Alright, like I said, I'm getting over a little cold. That's one reason why I'm making this quick and easy meal for myself. If you're coughing like that, do not cook for anybody else, please. Foodborne illnesses are a real big problem in the United States. All my time working in different restaurants, and when I was younger, I worked in 14 different restaurants at various positions, from out on the floor, bussing tables, waiting on tables, to in the kitchen, cooking all kinds of different things. One of the problems with the restaurant industry, in the service industry in general in our country, is that people don't get sick days. Okay, most people are working part-time so that they don't have, the restaurant doesn't have to pay insurance. And so they're working 35, 38, 39 hours a week, whatever it is, just under that minimum. And also, when you're working in those places, a lot of times you're not getting paid a whole lot, unless you're in some of the really nice places like I worked, some fancy resorts up in New Hampshire on a golf course, and down in Florida on a private island. Okay, those places were really nice and paid really well. But some other places, they just couldn't afford it. It was a little mom and pop restaurant in Mississippi or Massachusetts or somewhere, and they just couldn't afford to give people sick days. So what happens is people come to work and they're sick, and then they're sneezing and coughing all over your food. Okay, so that's terrible. I don't want to scare you away from eating in restaurants, but it's just a fact of life. In restaurants it happens. Now, one thing you don't want to do though is don't do that to people. All right, don't serve food to your family, to your friends, if you're sick. Now, I'm still just a little bit sick, but I'm only cooking for myself tonight, so that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to get myself any sicker than I already am. Alright, so this has now been sauteing for a little bit, and that's great. Now what I'm going to do is just pour a little bit of this marinara sauce in here. Again, this is just a generic marinara, and it doesn't really matter because I'm putting my own stuff in there too to help it out a bit. Alright, I'm just going to pour some of that in there. There we go. Rinse off the bottle a little bit. And then that baby's going to go in the fridge for another day. You can probably keep it up to about a week or so after you, let's see, about a week or so after you open it. Alright, that's good to know. Okay, now I've got that in there. Now I've got this bag of meatballs here. Alright, now I'm just cooking for myself again, so I don't need a whole lot, maybe 4 or 5, and that'll be fine. So I'm just going to stick these in here in the sauce. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Alright, so this will go nice. They got this little resealable bag here. Isn't that nice of the Omaha Steak Company to do that for us? So that way we don't have to use them all at once. Okay, stick them back in the little box. That'll go back in the freezer. I still got about, gosh, I don't know, 20 meatballs in there. That'll be enough for a really nice meal for another about 4 people probably. Another time. Okay, now here's the thing. Now that I've got my meatballs in here, I don't want to keep it on that medium heat. I want to go ahead and turn that down just about as low as it'll go. Now everything in here is cooked. These meatballs are pre-cooked. Okay, so I don't have to worry about cooking them. And all the vegetables are cooked, the sauce is cooked. All I want now is for these meatballs to sit here and soak up this sauce, because that's going to be really, really, really tasty if you let them soak up the sauce. And also, since they were frozen, it's going to take a little while for them to thaw out. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of let them sit right there in the pan. I'm going to get a cover. I'm going to stick it on. Let's see, where's my cover for that? Not quite. How about this one maybe? There we go, perfect. Alright, so as you can see here, I'm going to stick this cover on. I'm just going to let that sit for a little bit. In the meantime, I'm going to turn on my oven right here to about maybe 300 or so. And then I'm going to take my nice piece of French bread that's been sitting out, and I'm going to slice that right down the middle. Let's see here, I'm going to switch cutting boards here because that one's got tomato stuff all over it. Don't want tomato stuff on the outside of our bread, on the inside. That's what we want. Alright, so I'm just slicing that down the middle, and here's a little trick you can do with your bread. Actually, it's a little bit, I had it in the freezer, so it's still a little bit frozen. I'll show you my bread trick in just a few minutes. But we want that there, and then I'm going to get some cheese. Let's see what we got here. Okay, I got this nice bag of just shredded mozzarella cheese. Remember the order of the theme of today is to make it fast and easy, so you don't have to do a lot of work. Typically, I would buy my cheese in blocks, especially cheddar cheese and some other ones, but sometimes mozzarella cheese, you just want to keep a bag of shredded mozzarella around, and then you can use that all kinds of times. Just sprinkle a little bit here and there. When I was really not feeling well the other day, I made myself just a little bit of French bread with just cheese and like a very light sprinkling of garlic salt, not garlic salt, garlic powder, and just a few little fresh bay leaves sprinkled around. And that was all I needed. That's all my stomach could handle at the time. Just some hot bread and cheese, basically. But in this case, we're going to take the mozzarella and sprinkle it on the cheese and stick it in the oven in just a minute. But I am going to let that thaw out for just a little bit. So we'll be back. This is going to take maybe about 15 minutes of just letting the meatballs soak. You could let them soak a little longer if you want. As long as you want, really. Just make sure keep it on really low, and put a cover on it, because you don't want that spaghetti sauce. If spaghetti sauce starts boiling, it starts splattering all over the place, and it'll splatter up in your face and burn you, or it'll splatter all over your kitchen counter or your stove, and you don't want that because that makes a big mess. So The idea here is just to keep it really just barely warm, maybe a little bit simmering, and then let that sauce soak into those meatballs. Okay, and then go do something else. Again, go hug your woman, go clean something up, go take a shower, go watch some TV, do whatever you want to do for a little bit, go read a book, but then come back in about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll do the other part. All right, see you in a little bit. Okay, so we're back. I hope you enjoyed your shower or your TV show or your makeout session with your girl or whatever you were doing, walking the dog. You had a few minutes to do whatever it was you wanted there. Now, I promised you I was going to show you a trick with the bread. I'm actually going to show you two little tricks with the bread. And what we're going to do here is this little trick I learned a long time ago. So when you got this nice crunchy bread like this on the outside, you've got all this kind of doughy bread in the middle, and it tastes really good, but two things. One is you don't really want all those carbs, but then secondly, here's something you can do. You can take this little middle part out here, and then you can save this, and you can heat it up in the oven. You can make croutons out of it, or little to use in salad or soups or whatever. You can chop it up, put it in soups to thicken it a little bit, but we don't want it in our sandwich right now, and I'll tell you why in just a second. Okay, so I'm just kind of digging out just like a little, kind of making like a little boat out of this French bread here, and I'll show you here what that looks like. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting some sauce down in there, and this will, the little boat thing is going to help keep our sauce and our meatballs and our onions and our peppers and our garlic. It's all going to keep it in there really nice and tightly, so that way it's not, it's going to be messy anyway, but at least it's not all going to be spilling out all over the place when you try to eat it. Okay, so that's one little trick. Now here's another little trick, and this is mainly for flavor, okay, but also it just gives a nice crunchiness to the bread a little bit. And what I'm doing is just sprinkling very, very lightly just a little bit of olive oil right on here. So again, it gives that nice olive oil flavor, but also gives a little extra crunch to the bread. Alright, now I'm going to take a little bit of this mozzarella cheese here, and I'm going to sprinkle that right on the bread. And you can do that again as much or as little as you want to taste. So I'm just kind of giving it a light sprinkling here, but if you're a heavy cheese eater, feel free, go for it. If you're trying to count your calories, or if you just don't like that much cheese, that's fine, just put a little bit there. Now, that's my mozzarella cheese. Now, here's another thing. I didn't mention this earlier because I forgot when I was talking about my ingredients, but what I've got here is just a few nice little fresh basil leaves. And if you think fresh basil and fresh rosemary and those kind of things are out of your budget or whatever, don't worry about that. Just go and get one little basil plant, or you can buy the seeds too, and for like 25 cents to $1 you can buy a little pack of seeds. This one, I bought a nice little basil plant for about $2 or $3, and I planted it in a pot outside, and I've been getting basil leaves, fresh basil off it all summer long for 4 or 5 months. Okay, so this is great. So don't think it's out of your reach to be using fresh herbs and all that in your cooking, because you can have a nice little windowsill garden, or you can just do it once in a while if you want to just go buy it fresh like that, but I wouldn't do that. Take it home, plant it, let it grow. Alright, so I'm just going to scatter this basil around a little. You can put it in the sauce if you want, but I kind of like the nice tangy fresh taste of it a little better. Sometimes I'll put it in the sauce as well. So I'm just kind of sprinkling these around. You don't have to make them any particular size. There we go. And done. Okay, so that was easy. Now I'm going to transfer this bread to my little foil covered pan. Now you're going to ask me, why am I covering the pan with foil? Well, not because my grandma told me to do it and her grandma told her to do it, if you ever heard the roast beef story, but that's a different story. So I'll tell you that some other time. Now, here's the reason why I do it. Because this is an old pan. All right, number one, it's an old beat up pan. It's kind of ucky looking. All right, I've had it for probably 20 years, and I keep using it over and over again. And so one thing is, I want to just make sure my food is clean. Now the pan is clean, it's just old, right? And now the other thing though is I don't have to clean the pan after I'm done. Okay, it's just foil. When I'm done, I rip off the foil and then put the pan back in the shelf, and I'm already done. Once in a while I might have to wash it a little bit, but that's just a good little Mountain Man Gourmet trick for you. Save you on a little bit of dishwashing. Okay, alright, so I'm going to take this and just transfer the bread right over here to this foil pan. Notice we've got just our fresh basil, little mozzarella, cheese, and some olive oil. Just very, very light sprinkling of olive oil. And I'm going to stick this here in my 300-degree oven. And in the meantime, I'm going to give my meatballs a little stir here. They've been sitting here soaking up the sauce. Ooh. Maybe. Okay, they're smelling good. Alright, nothing like the smell of garlic and tomatoes and onions and peppers all going together. That smells really good. I can even smell it, even though I'm getting rid of my cold here. I can still smell it. Now here's another thing that I'm going to do. Now you don't have to do this. It depends on if you like the texture of the big giant chunky meatballs. That's good. But what I'm doing here, just to kind of speed up the process of the soaking in of the spaghetti sauce, the marinara sauce, is I'm chopping these little guys in half. Okay. Now, if you'll see here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip them over so that the middle part is face down inside the sauce. Then what that's going to do is going to help soak up the sauce so that that flavor will get absorbed right into the meatballs right there. So every bite you're going to still have nice big luscious chunky bites, half a meatball size, but then each one of those bites is not going to just have sauce around it, but it's going to have the sauce in it, and it's going to just be really good. So I'm just going to let that soak for a few minutes while the bread's heating up. That'll only take maybe 5 minutes tops, and then we'll be ready to eat. So we'll see you in just a minute. Okie dokie. So now for our final and most important step. Let's take this sucker out of the oven and eat it. Okay, so if you'll notice here, we got our nicely toasted, see that beautiful kind of browned edges on that bread. Alright, we've got that nice going nicely, and I'm going to stick that right on my plate. Be careful there, it might be a little hot. Now, here's something else we're going to do. Remember I mentioned something about using the inside of the bread for some homemade croutons. And you don't have to buy those pre-packaged things with all kinds of artificial colors and flavors and all that stuff in it. You just make your own. And here's an easy way to do it. I love the smell of fresh bread there. But what we're going to do is just take that and kind of break it up into little tiny pieces, maybe about 1 inch square or something. Don't worry, don't chop them. Just, I guess you could if you want to. If you want it to look like you bought one of those pre-packaged exactly 1 and 1/4 inch square croutons from the store. But this is how they make it in the old country. Now, not my old country. I'm not Italian or anything, although I've been accused of it before. But my friend Joey Di Pasquale from high school, I used to hang out at his house a lot with my friend John Baldessari, and all those guys were Italians, and they knew how to cook, their moms knew how to cook, and they passed it down to their kids. And I used to hang out in the kitchen and watch too. So I got a little Italian by proxy in me. All right, so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of this olive oil. Again, just a light sprinkling, not too much. You don't want them just all greasy, but just a little bit to give them some crunch. All right. Then I'm going to take the little bit of garlic powder here, not garlic salt, garlic powder, okay? Garlic salt is pretty much a bunch of salt with a little tiny garlic flavor. If you want some salt, go ahead and add a little bit, but you don't want all that salty stuff. One reason why a lot of Americans suffer from high blood pressure and diabetes is because of all the extra salt and sugar they put in processed foods and in restaurant food and stuff. But we're not going to do that to ourselves or our families, are we? All right. Now, the next thing we've got here is some Italian seasoning. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of that. And, you know, you can make your own mixes. I've got a Mountain Man Gourmet special Italian seasoning mix that'll be coming out soon. So be sure to check the website for that. In the meantime, I just got some Italian seasoning there. And then I'm just going to take that kind of lightly fluff it up a little bit here with my hands. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. You can always wash them. Alright, if you can't touch the food, what good is it? Alright, so there we go. So I'm just going to stick that in the oven. Now, I turned the oven off a few minutes ago. And so this is just going to sit in here while I eat. And it can sit in there even overnight, doesn't matter. The idea is just to get the bread dried out with that nice yummy flavor of the olive oil and the spices and herbs that you put on it. And I put the garlic powder and a little bit of Italian seasoning, which has marjoram and basil and oregano, a couple other things. You can put pretty much whatever you want. You can make Cajun flavored croutons, you can make Italian flavored croutons, you can make Asian flavored croutons, whatever you want. Just depends on the spices. That's one thing I love about spices, is you can just really add a lot of variety to food. With, you know, the same old chicken breast, you can make it 100,000 different ways depending on how many spices you put in it and the way that you cook it. That's basically it. Alright, so we are ready to eat. Look at this. Oh no, we're not ready to eat because I haven't put my meatballs on yet. But I did let the bread cool off just a little bit, and it's just nice and crunchy. I don't know if you can hear that, but oh. Nice crunch to it. Got the cheese nice melted, a little bit browned. See, the basil is a little bit toasted. Yummy. Alright, so let me put this stuff back over here in my little spice box. Mountain Man Gourmet spice box here. I got all kinds of different spices going on. Alright, now I'm going to take this lovely meatball mixture here. Look at that now. See the steam rising off that? Smells so good. Alright, now I'm going to take this, and actually I probably made a little bit more than I needed, so that's good. I can have some leftovers another time. Mix it up with a little spaghetti or whatever. But I'm going to just put a nice layer here on my bread, and I'm only going to put it on one side. Now you could put it on both sides and just serve it kind of like an open face sandwich if you want, but I want to close this sucker up, and I want to have that crunch on both sides of my mouth as I'm biting into my sandwich. Alright, so that's plenty right there. Yes, it does look like I've got some left over, so I can take that amount right there and then just chop that up. Maybe I've got 3-4 meatball halves in there. That's a nice little lunch size portion. Just boil up a little bit of spaghetti or noodles, and there's another meal right there. Okay, didn't even know I was making it. But cool thing about Mountain Man Gourmet cooking is you never know what you're going to find, and you never know what you're going to get until it's there. Right. So I'm going to set that right there. Notice the bottom's really hot, so I don't know if you can see that, but I'm setting it on the metal part of the sink, not on the countertop, because I don't want to burn a hole in my countertop. Alright, so there we go. Look at that. Now I'm going to do one more thing before I eat, and that is I'm going to take a little bit of Parmesan cheese here, okay? grated Parmesan cheese again. Sometimes I can be really fancy and buy it and whole and shred it myself and all that, but I always keep a little bottle of this pre-grated Parmesan. Oh baby, it just adds that nice little tanginess to it. And there we go. There we have Mountain Man Gourmet meatball, sausage and pepper sandwich, and it's going to be really yummy. I hope you can make this at home. Send me an email. Let me know if you tried it. How did you like it? If you made any variations to it, send me your variations and we'll post them on the website. Okay, thanks for being here. Live well, eat well, and be happy.